I'm going to get started, and I imagine a few more people might join us as we go. But welcome everybody. As I said, it's the last session of Innovation and Engagement 2021. I just want to give a massive shout out to Kerry and Caris, because the coordination, the care, the intention that has gone into making the last 2 days happen is extraordinary. So thank you both so very much for making this happen. And of course, thanks to all of our partners who have supported bringing the event into fruition and continuing on the legacy of Mansions of the Future. My name is Amara Spence. My pronouns are she, her, and for visual description, I am a Black woman with black hair and bright red lipstick and a white shirt. And I'm also surrounded by the artwork of Paula Varjak and an artist called Chizzy. It's really, really wonderful to be here and to see so many folks who have joined us at previous conversations and folks who have just joined for the first time. You've joined for an incredible session to wrap up. A couple of housekeeping things before we get into everything. So we're going to be here until roughly 4:20, 4:25 in this conversation before we close with final comments that will end strictly at 4:30. And that's because, well, for many reasons, we're respecting everybody's time, but our wonderful BSL interpreters who have carried the whole 2 days must be absolutely shattered. So thank you so much to Jenny and to Claire for the incredible support that you've given us all. And also a massive, massive thank you to Becky Bryson, who has been live illustrating and retrospectively illustrating all the conversations. And I've never seen anybody work at such a speed. So thank you so much, because I know the illustrations are gorgeous and I can't wait to see them. And of course, we're going to share them afterwards. So we're going to kind of get into the final conversation, which is about digital infrastructures. And I want to encourage everyone to please keep the chat box as live as possible. Add in your questions, your comments, your big ups, your thoughts, your queries, everything in the chat. And we'll continue to funnel them through. So before I introduce Ruth Catlow and Baile Ali as the final speakers for today, this conversation, digital infrastructures, has really come from the fact that we couldn't think about engagement, we couldn't think about innovation without reflecting on digital infrastructure in a really expansive way, particularly given the last 18 months that we've just gone through and that the future that we continue to step into. And we were really thinking about whether the digital realm offers a democratized space for radical imagination and the challenging of social norms. We're questioning what is the role of new and open source technologies to promote active citizenship, to inspire critical thinking and interdisciplinary knowledge exchange. We're thinking very much about participation and agency. What are the advantages? What are the challenges? And what are the limitations of this work? And that's just a snippet of what I know this conversation is going to touch on, which I'm really, really excited. I'm really honoured to welcome Ruth Catlow, who is representing Furtherfield as the co-founder and artistic director of Furtherfield and networked cultures expert. Her artistic practice and curatorial work at Furtherfield has focused on critical investigation of digital and network technologies and their emancipatory potential. She has developed a specialism in the creation of games for deep and rigorous research called Live Art Action Research Roleplay, or LAARRPS. Sorry, that took me a moment. LARPs. Ruth is also the founder of Decal, Decentralized Arts Lab, a Furtherfield initiative that exists to mobilize collaborative research and development by leading artists using blockchain and Web 3.0 technologies for fairer, more dynamic and connected cultural ecologies and economies. Furtherfield is London's longest running centre for art and technology. Their mission is to disrupt and democratise through deep exploration, open tools and free thinking. And I'm honoured to introduce our other guest who I had the pleasure of working with in a different capacity recently. And Baile has just been such a diamond in such a short space of time that I've met you. It's an honour to introduce Baile Ali as an artist, a researcher, a sound engineer, and helps to run Sable Radio, which is an online radio station and creative platform. They broadcast, run workshops, produce podcasts, support artists, and curate programs, all from a little studio on the edge of the city. It's a pleasure to welcome you, Baile and Ruth, and I'm going to hand over to Ruth to get us into the conversation. Thank you both so much.
Thank you, Amara. It's such a pleasure to be here. The whole kind of preparation for this event has just been exemplary. I felt like there's real attention to making sure that this is a real conversation. That isn't always the case. It's been really great to meet Baile. I'm really looking forward to talking more about this. This is just really nicely set up. So thank you, everyone. And hello to everyone in the audience. It will be really good to hear your questions and maybe inputs at certain points in this conversation. I think given the kind of topic that we're looking at, I just want to, because this is really, I hate to admit it, but this is really a conversation across generations a little bit. And I think it's useful to know a bit about kind of how, like, we're really here to learn more about the story of Sable Radio and kind of what this work means now. But I think it's useful as the founder of a kind of artist community hub that got going in the mid-90s to, given that we're talking about democracy and the kind of democratizing potential of the digital sphere or otherwise, I think it's useful maybe to have a little bit of a kind of historical perspective. So yes, so I'm an artist, and in the mid-90s we were really inspired to build our own art context with artists, techies and activists around the world in response to the kind of smothering effect, as we felt it, of the Saatchi's kind of takeover of the London and UK art scene, who were kind of using their marketing machine to create art stars, celebrity culture. And this had all kinds of knock-on effects for what it felt like to be an artist in London, which is where I was then, and what it meant, what art then started to feel like to audiences and people in general. This was still really the early days of the web, and our work was, I kind of describe myself, it still works, I'm just going to keep on saying it until it doesn't work. I describe myself as a recovering web utopian. So our work then was really informed by this utopian dream of a web that was kind of free, open, a peer-to-peer, a kind of peer-to-peer venture, a place that we could build together, and a place to make the cultures of collaboration, to kind of make a space for the kind of collaborations that we wanted to have in order to produce, critique, distribute the work. It's also worth knowing that Mark Garrett, who's Furtherfield's co-founder, prior to that had quite a long history in kind of street art, pirate radio in Bristol, and a kind of pre-internet DIY culture on bulletin boards. So there's this kind of coming, it's like as close to the street as network culture gets, I think, this kind of early bulletin board and pirate radio. So I feel like really, like even before I met Baile, I already felt a kind of strong affinity with what I saw going on at Sable Radio and was really excited. So just to remind us of our topic. So we've been asked to talk about whether the digital sphere offers a democratized space for the radical imagination to reimagine new possibilities and challenge social norms. We're going to be chatting for about, I think about 3/4 of an hour, and then we'll open up to questions from the floor. So please do start getting your questions in, but also it will be really good to hear from any of you examples that you have of projects that you think are doing this really well on one hand, and projects that say they're doing it and are really doing something very different. I think both are really interesting to think about. Okay, so before we get into thinking about this question, it'd be really good to hear from you, Baile, like just more about yourself. If you could just tell us about you and what led you to be the founder of Sable Radio.
Cool. Thank you for the introductions, both from Amara and yourself, Ruth. I think, should we just quickly do image descriptions, Ruth?
Oh, yes. Sorry.
Shall I kick off?
Yes, go.
So, and I think that will help me describe myself anyway,
Okay.
because, so yeah, I am Baile. My image is, I kind of mixed raced. I've got like a bob today, I'd call it. Slightly long hair, just coming down past my ears, curly. My background is I'm in a fairly janky, should we call it rustic studio, with like exposed plaster, and on my right hand side are some plants. This isn't my studio, it's my colleague's studio, so we've swapped. My plants are usually a lot healthier than his, but yeah. And yeah, image description wise, I think that's fine. Yeah, black t-shirt as well. Yeah.
Shall I do me and then we'll get back to you?
Yeah.
Okay, so I'm a white woman. I have kind of aviation style glasses, white gold rimmed glasses, a hairstyle that my better fashion informed friends tell me is wolf, which really tickles me, I have to say. Brunette, and my background is a picture of the floor for my local woodlands when it was 6 inches deep in mud. So it's a good visceral, gives me a kind of sense of the real world when I'm actually just a floating head in Zoom. Okay, Baile.
Cool. About myself, and how did we start Sable Radio? So it's a growing team. It started with just me and Aura, who is kindly next door right now running a photo shoot for us while I pop off here. So it's me and Aura. We both studied in Leeds. I studied politics, and yeah, I guess what did we want at the time? I mean, we just kind of wanted a platform in Leeds that would be, a creative platform for people to come. Also, let me know if I'm talking too fast. Maybe someone can, pull me up. A creative platform in Leeds. And I guess we wanted a place that could draw together like a really wide variety and big range of artistic practices. So like, I guess we're not, we weren't even, and I think we're still not even like radio aficionados. Like I think some people can really like wax lyrical just about radio, but for us it was more, it kind of combined lots of different practices. Like, for example, today there's a photo shoot happening, so we've got photographers, we've got videographers there, we work with graphic designers a lot, obviously DJs, presenters, hosts, there's like curation and programming. So I think that was the appeal for us. It was just like, a platform through which we could do like lots of different things, and kind of give, another big thing was like access to equipment and have a space that, people in the city, because, that is like really devoid of spaces in Leeds that actually, are really, open their doors, let you borrow their equipment. And so, I guess that was the vision. And that was 2 and a bit years ago, 2 and almost, it was our second birthday a few weeks ago. Yeah, we've barely been able to celebrate it. Well, we weren't even able to celebrate our first birthday, so but I won't go there. So I think that's enough detail. I think myself, I studied politics, really interested in film, kind of graduated and actually, the blunt reality of it was that I wasn't getting any jobs, so no one was hiring me. So I think, we just thought we'd try and rough it and do it a freelance way and like build a platform like that. And I guess kind of beyond Sable and my own interests are really interested in like digital medias, film, kind of like a big range of like artistic arts practices.
Can you just like how much has your kind of grounding in politics played out in your kind of artistical and musical choices? Do you feel a connection, or is it kind of, will you only know that when you look back on it, do you think?
Yeah, I think it has massively. I think something that I'd say from the outset is that like there is a real difference between like my personal politics or like and or slash what Sable does. I think it's really hard to if you're trying to have a platform which is representing like over 60 artists to kind of have that yeah, just really conscious about my own politics leaking into that and how much it should. And I guess it's something I ask myself a lot. But yeah, I guess like, down to the way we operate, the host that we kind of accept to have shows, how we program, what we program. I mean, who's working with us, how we pay them, just, I guess, I think like everything is just kind of informed by the politics of me and Aura and Sable, and just kind of outside of that.
So, okay, so who is making your shows? Kind of what are they about, and who's listening to them? Can you kind of paint us a picture of the range? Yeah,
I mean, I definitely can. I mean, so funnily enough, today and tomorrow, because we've not been broadcasting for a while over COVID, but we're reopening the studio, and today and tomorrow we've had everyone in the studio getting a picture taken and talking to us, so it's very fresh. It's about like 50 or 60 different hosts doing like hour shows a month or possibly more regular, and that's everything from Club Collective. So we just had someone from Love Muscle in the studio, which is like a really big like queer club night in Leeds. Who else are we having? There's someone else that does a lot of stuff in like queer, like Jewish history. So like they do a program like about Jewish history, and they're coming to the studio in a sec. And then it's like, but a lot of it's, that's maybe some of the more like, And then there's just like the more musical stuff. People have chat shows. And I think who listens to it audience wise, I guess the good thing about online radio is that it can engage like global audiences like really easily, like a lot more easily than I guess FM could. So it kind of, I mean, all the different hosts bring with them like different listenerships. We were broadcasting with someone in Brooklyn the other day, so we had like a lot of like American listeners. We've got a show coming up which is with someone called Wonton Witch, so we might get like a lot of listeners from like Asia that day. So it's kind of really broad.
And how are you like, so you have 60 broadcasters, how do they know about you, or how do you know about them? Like how are you connecting up and finding each other? Like why are they coming to you? What's the Sable Radio offer?
I guess like studio space, access to equipment, kind of, when we do projects outside of this. So we recently broadcasted from like a greengrocers, and collaborate with different organizations, like paying them. So I guess that's the offer. Why do they come to us? Maybe they might say something about like the ethics or like politics of the station that's like maybe different, or like commitment to like a sustainable platform. But I think that I feel like it was quite fairly easy. I think both of us individually both have like relationships like throughout the city through Aura's a DJ as well, so like through our kind of own networks. And then there's like a lot of stuff outside of that is like, for example, we might work with we had a really good show which was with like a carnival photographer and someone that's like from a carnival costume company, and I guess I met them both through some work we'd done with like Leeds West Indian Carnival. So like just like keeps on growing. And then there's also the like more aggressive kind of like have a show on Sable, which is like we had someone great yesterday come and use some of our equipment, and they do like a lot of interviews with like drill artists in Leeds. So I was a bit like come and do that with us.
You mean you're chasing them down basically?
Pretty much. And
okay, good. Can you just paint a little bit more of a picture about the kind of community and economy around Sable Radio? Like, so you talk about kind of like you have equipment and production facilities. Like, what's the economy? What's making it possible? What makes it sustainable? You talk about it as a sustainable platform. So how's that working?
As in how we make our money?
Yeah. I mean, it might be how you make your money, but it might be a bit more mixed than that.
Yeah,
sometimes I think in network communities, sometimes there's a kind of flow of other things as well as money. But yeah, I think it's important to talk about the money too.
Yeah, I guess I think just kind of like context-wise, I know you were touching on like pirate radio, but I guess like online radio in this country has really been born out of pirate radio, and like, you know, I only really caught, you know, the end of it when I was really young, but like people talked to me about it and like, you know, paying subs on radios and stuff. So I think it was always kind of, you know, the history of it is like seen as like quite a converse thing, that like actually the radio is doing something for you, for the hosts. And like it is, but then I guess I'm just like a pragmatic and a skeptic, and I guess my way of framing it is actually like, what are we offering everyone else? So how do we make our money? Yeah, it's definitely. So I guess I just say that to say it was definitely a massive uphill struggle. And I think when we started the platform, me and Ora were quite young, and we didn't have such a like, you know, eye on those things as maybe we do now. So we kind of did it, and then we're like, oh, actually, like, how do we make this sustainable? It's cool that we've got a studio and we're filling it, but like, what is it like? We're always talking like, you know, what's the value that we're offering to hosts, and, you know, are we ready for another 30 different hosts on the station? And if we are, like, what can we do for them? So like mostly for us, we just kind of built it out of like, because we are in like artist studios, like working with different arts organizations in the city, like working with galleries, doing sound engineering for them, curation, programming. So, you know, we're doing some stuff at like Fact Liverpool with Black Obsidian sound system that I'm like proudly championing on my top today. So I guess that was kind of like yeah, the main side of things. So like, yeah, paying for cameras and then or like equipment, and then we can kind of use that to like put back into the station when we do like paid gigs for stuff like that. Yeah, and just mainly working with arts organizations. I mean, this kind of touches on something that I guess we'll talk about later, but and then like the other big thing is like brand partnerships and stuff, and it's not something we've like really delved into so like massively, but we yeah, we have like a mentorship and training program for 18 to 25-year-old Black people in Leeds that we're running at the moment. And yesterday we had a session from some lovely DJ Mag execs, and they came and talked to us about brand partnerships, the murky and like expansive world of brand partnerships.
And how do you feel about that? How was it feeling?
I mean, I learned a lot. Like, I feel like it's always like a conflict or like a contestation. Most of these places, you know, essentially, that are your values aligned? Probably not. Like, you know, I guess for them that, you know, that essentially it's like, it's consumerism, and I think they're trying to sell a product, and where arts organizations or kind of platforms or creative platforms like this aren't being sustained in the right way that they should be being sustained by the state, then like ultimately people are gonna like kind of accept money from these things. Like, for example, I think I was saying to you on our pre-meeting, we have like an abundance of Red Bull fridges and Red Bull in our studio, and like, it's not something I'm particularly proud of, and I'm like, you know, I'll always openly speak about how fascist a company it is, but at the same time they gave us a few grand to give to one of the people on Resound, which was like our program to like mentor and training. So it's like, yeah, it's a give and take thing, I guess.
Yeah, I'm really aware, like with our American comrades, that we have like there's really different economies, yeah, and that with the friends of ours that we partner in the States, like where there just isn't this where there isn't the public funding for the arts, I think that this conversation can sound really strange actually, where everything is always a kind of hard hustle, and the hustling to get the right kind of value alignment is really a big part of the job. And I think that maybe we should apply ourselves to the question that we've been set to think about, which is the degree to which we think, and I guess we're being asked to think specifically about the digital sphere. Now, I don't think that we have these kind of hard edges really between wider society and the digital sphere, but let's try and do it anyway. So, like, what degree do we, because there's a lot said about it, what degree do you think the digital sphere is democratized? Yes, sorry, that's too big. So let's break it down. So what are the kind of best examples you've seen of digital tech being used to support kind of, let's talk about maybe solidarity and movement building, or bringing disparate voices together around a common cause? Like, are there specific technologies, or like what's your approach to the use of tech to do this in a way that feels wholesome to you?
Yeah, I mean, maybe not speak directly through radio, but I guess it will all apply. But like I said, like sometimes I'm like a bit of a downer on these things and like a pragmatist, and that I really don't know how much space there is for like kind of like democratized or like the value of like democratized resistance in this spaces, or like how to kind of counter the kind of like hegemony or like monopoly that kind of like, I don't know, big tech or like corporations has over like platforms, and like how much space we have outside of that. I mean, I guess, and in my experience is really just kind of using it, like doing what you can within those platforms, which is like increasingly and like really hard for, obviously like non-white people, activists, people that are actually like politically engaged in these platforms. And like, I've been shadow banned and had like content banned on like Instagram and stuff before, and it's just like, it's really like, it's just crazy to think how easily they can like just censor people. But yeah, I guess,
can you just talk a little bit more about what's going on there? Like because this might be really common knowledge for you and your friends, but I'm kind of interested to know exactly the kinds of things that are happening, because I think concrete examples are good for people to then understand what's at stake.
Yeah, I mean, it really depends on just what people are speaking on it, and often it can just be really random. Like, and I guess that's the thing. It's not like an accountable, there's no checks and balances. When you get banned, they're not telling you why they got banned. They're not telling you like what you can do to not get banned. It's just like, that's it. So I guess friends and like that speak often about like politics, I guess it's a lot clearer for them, or like activist circles, and having certain phrases banned. I guess like the most like recent one is like looking at like Palestine, or like having stuff like that, like certain phrases like banned or like heavily censored.
Yeah. Okay. And so we've got free speech as an issue.
Mm-hmm.
And when we first met to kind of like work out what we wanted to talk about, that we were also talking about kind of access issues. And like, so if we're talking about big tech, kind of what's kind of your take on what the access issues are, what's happening, and what are the kind of consequences of the kind of access issues there are when everyone does all of their kind of sharing and marketing through these big platforms?
Okay, and access, do you mean like audiences?
I mean, audiences, maybe specific audiences, like who isn't getting to know about what you do,
Yeah.
that stuff.
So I guess I'll take it back slightly, and I say, actually, there is like a positive to online radio that I probably don't engage with enough in that sense, is that actually you do have the freedom. We're not, our stream isn't hosted on Facebook. It's not hosted on YouTube. It's not really hosted on any of those platforms. Like, it's its own native stream. So when we stream, essentially, we can talk about whatever we like. I think it's always funny. I think sometimes when slightly older people come onto the station and they're like, oh, am I allowed to swear? And we're just a bit like caught off guard, like, yeah, this isn't BBC Radio, don't worry. So I guess that there is a positive in that. And I mean, it's a double-edged sword, because actually a lot of the promo and the marketing and actually audience engagement does happen through platforms like Instagram, which is obviously owned by Facebook. But yeah, I guess there is, to not be such a downer, there is like a glimmer of hope, or like some kind of good stuff within that. And then as far as reaching audiences, I'll just let the caption catch up. As far as reaching audiences and like who has the access to it, I mean, I guess what we were talking about before was just like, yeah, access to the internet, and access to access to engage with these things. I think we take it for granted, but even without even looking beyond the UK, like it's not even like, you know, access to the internet isn't even like as widespread as it should be in this country. And I was saying that, you know, during lockdown in the area that I live is quite a low income area of Leeds, and you know, you're just having, like, in the height of lockdown, having queues of people outside like the public library to use the Wi-Fi. So it's, you know, I think things that we take for granted, it's just a bit like, oh shit, like actually no, like there is actually a real barrier to even engage with like the start of these things. And so I guess, yeah.
Yeah, and like, are there in Leeds, I mean, I don't know, beyond kind of council run programs to put better access for kids, give better access for kids to laptops for education, I'm not that aware of any really great programs to kind of put this right. Do you know of any programs that are kind of trying to do anything about this particular, because obviously in kind of pandemic living, the divide really grows because we're all still socializing, working, being ridiculously like unhealthily productive still through these network connections, but there's quite a big gap, isn't there?
And I mean, yeah, you know, I've seen some smaller initiatives with like some community groups, you know, here, like giving out like data parcels and stuff. But you know, I guess the blunt reality of it is that if it was widespread as it should be, then there would never be queues of people outside, like queuing up for Wi-Fi, like in the middle of a pandemic. And it's like, yeah, and you know, as much as like, you know, I feel like the responsibility massively in the pandemic fell on like, you know, small kind of like community groups, or like, rather than actually the state kind of, I guess the state of like kind of passed on a lot of the responsibility for doing the stuff that they, you know, they should really be ensuring, but they weren't.
Yeah.
And it's, I mean, it's, I'll harp on about it, but it's like really, it's not even like, the thing for me is it's like, you know, for the government, it's like in their interest to like provide people like with working broadband computers, like, but just because I feel like, you know, they're so interested in like real short-term profits and like siphoning off every fucking penny that is meant for the people in this country, that, you know, they don't even get to see that reality.
Yes, so true. I'm slightly distracted by the fact that there are lots of questions appearing in the chat, and I feel like rather than saving them to the end, we should take a little break from our flow and maybe like, and I can't read, listen and talk at the same time. So but I feel like it's a good moment. So from Matt Fraston, he says, Fratson, sorry, this is really fascinating. I'm Matt. I'm the digital engagement producer for 87 Gallery and ArtLink Hull. And at the moment, one of the main focus points is thinking about how to develop and deliver accessible projects using digital technologies, from photography to sound to AR, with disability arts and community partnerships, and finding this very challenging. I think this is still, I don't know if this is still Matt. I'll read them all out and then we can just discuss them en masse. So, Baile, I feel so nostalgic listening to you reflect on Sable origins. By the time I was in my late teens, it felt like radio was a struggling art platform as we saw the rise of streaming. I'm super interested in seeing Sable, No Signal, etc., bringing back this revival. What was it about radio that you felt like it was worthwhile to put, a worthwhile pursuit for you? You look like you want to answer that straight away, so.
No, it's okay. Is there more? I'm trying to.
There are more. No, we'll keep going. We'll gather them up. So a tidbit again from Matt, I found interesting from a colleague recently, was the idea that even though we might consider digital spaces to be inherently more democratic, if you cannot afford, for example, data, then sometimes that does not apply any more readily for non-digitally privileged or enabled audiences. I think we've been talking about this.
Should we pause there?
Okay.
And maybe I can reply to Matt's first two. I mean, I guess the second one, again, it's just like ultimately these kind of things do just kind of reflect a bias and like things in society, like more often than not, these digital spaces are going to kind of reflect that bias, and like not, they're not being engineered with access or like disability access in mind. They're not being engineered with, kind of a range of like considerations of, different people. So yeah, I guess it wasn't really a question, that second bit. And then the first question was thinking about how to develop accessible projects using digital technologies, finding this very challenging. I mean, it'd be cool to know like what you're finding challenging. But I guess, yeah, it's something that I think over the last year and a half, people have really spoken a lot about. Yeah, I don't really have the...
I mean, I guess like connecting with what you just said before, like if we live in a society where basically core communication and social infrastructure is provided through a profit-driven market system, then we have no way to ensure that that is going to serve a kind of collective good social need, because the market will always go for where the profit is, and that isn't always, that doesn't cover, that's very unlikely to cover everybody. So it feels like, this is why I was kind of saying before, is like we can't really separate these kind of what happens in the digital realm from what's happening in our kind of wider societal or political realm.
Yeah, and I guess it's just like speaking with the audiences that you're trying to engage. And I know that sounds like a really oversimplified like approach, but rather than kind of, we talk a lot about like disability access, and there's always like, I don't know, infographics or things online that you can read, but actually when I've spoken to people with those like access needs, it's always like made it like a lot more real for me. And like actually it's often kind of see it like become easier than maybe the barrier seemed at first. But yeah, I realize that's really wishy-washy, Matt. I'm sorry I couldn't give you anything more concrete.
Do you mean that like once you know what the need is, it's easier to kind of help serve that need? Is that what you meant?
Yeah, and I think just like, yeah, I guess hearing it from the horse's mouth, like kind of no matter what it is, like just, and it's a long-term thing, like engaging audiences and like speaking with people in your like local area and like finding out what they need. But I guess just the more you do, the more you learn.
I guess this makes me think also, like, because you're also running a physical studio, so you're providing access to actual physical resources and physical spaces. So one of the problems with access to kind of digital stuff is that it requires that you have access to devices, bandwidth, blah, blah, blah. So one of the things that maybe excites me about, I'm kind of answering the question that was given to you, but I'm answering it for you. Like the thing that excites me about things like community radio programs is that you're putting the kind of, you're putting the tools in the hands of people to create stuff, not just access it as kind of, not just to be receivers, but to be transmitters in the system. That for me is the kind of power and excitement of things like radio projects. And it was also the kind of early power of internet as well, like when people were like literally building, like coding the spaces, and they weren't commercial spaces initially. I think there's some kind of link there.
Yeah, and then I just think actually one thing that has kind of popped up that kind of answers that a lot is, I've been in kind of conversations with like various arts organizations in Leeds a lot over the last year about this stuff. And it's like, I feel like digital stuff oftentimes for like more like traditional, and by like, I mean like quite stale kind of like arts organizations in cities, is like, it's usually an add-on. Like, it's like, okay, cool, we'll do an exhibition and then we'll add on like an artist talk. But I guess for people that either through, lack of income, like, or for whatever other reason can't be there physically, an artist talk is not like a replacement for like seeing the exhibition itself. Right. And I guess like when you actually start trying to think of those things, and like, even like recently, like, okay, budget, is a barrier, but it's like, cool, you can't afford like a full kind of like 360 3D render of the space, but you can actually like have a resource there, which is like someone filming the space going around as if maybe you were like a participant. And actually, like, it sounds really simple and like definitely also could be interpreted as lazy, but like it's a lot better than like what a lot of places are doing at the moment. Like there isn't even that, which is like, when you think, like, it's quite shocking. Like, yeah, there's no way to engage with an exhibition or, you know, some other kind of arts project unless you're sat at home and listening to like a fairly dreary artist talk.
I think you've hit on something there that I think again is like really specific to, that comes out of the spirit of community radio, that I connect also with early days internet community art stuff. But like, so you said, like, short of making a 3D render of an exhibition space, like a VR version, you could do like a guided tour where someone's taking you around. Now, I just can't, I don't know what kind of human beings wouldn't prefer that at all times anyway. Like, who really wants to navigate a 3D space in VR? And yet that is, I think this is a really good example of where, let's call them stale institutions. It's Friday afternoon, we should give ourselves a bit of slack. Stale institutions are kind of like buying into this kind of high-rise techno dream where like it's always about kind of higher fidelity, greater sharpness, the latest, most expensive thing, that often just gives really horrible experiences, and that really distances people from what the thing's all about and what makes it exciting, like from the sociality, basically the social experience of the stuff. Yeah, massively. Yeah, so I'm very, very glad you said that. Thank you. I mean, I am actually personally currently working on a live action role play, part of which will take place in VR. So I don't want to shoot myself in the foot, because I think there are some quite interesting things actually just emerging in social VR. And I think some of the tech, the kind of consumer tech prices are coming down there as well. And I think some really interesting things can happen in these, like, I know that like one of the spaces we're working in is called VR Chat. And this is, it's not an open source space, unfortunately, but it's kind of highly programmable. And there's many kind of social spaces in VR Chat that have been like, this is a space that's been really taken over by the furry community. Also, Black and trans activists are like doing this kind of brilliant world building where they're building the kind of these virtual worlds that basically serve their social needs in ways that wouldn't kind of happen if they were being produced by Microsoft, basically. And there's something really exciting about when people start to just take hold of things, new texts as they emerge, if they can afford to get their hands on it, basically. Yeah.
And I guess it's also just thinking like, I guess like relating it to, I mean, I guess everyone's kind of seen that stuff around that Sky Pool in Nine Elms, you know, in like an area where you've got like a lot of like low income housing or people like without housing. And I think it, again, like the digital world kind of like mirroring that. And it's like, okay, cool. We're like rushing into like galleries and thinking VR or like 3D renders and exhibitions, but like there's like a big gap of things that you've not even addressed before you can get to there. And I think, yeah, just that kind of reflection of so much is getting like missed in between before you have that fucking 100-foot high sky pool in Nine Elms.
Absolutely. And I think, I mean, I don't know what you think, but I think that there's something, so this is my experience. I think that during the pandemic, the fact that I'm the age that I am, that I have a certain kind of community established around me, like all doing work that I find kind of very nourishing, politically stimulating, artistically stimulating, has meant that I'm spending my life in actually a pretty kind of cozy space, even though I get really sick of all these floating heads in Zoom, and that feels really brutal and hard on the body, which is why I've got a muddy patch behind me, like desperate to get into the physical world. but it's actually quite hard to stay grounded and stay aware of just what a gap is opening up, I think, for people, and to stay alert to what's happening politically around us, I think, both in the digital realm, but also just in our neighborhoods, especially under lockdown when we can't move more than a mile away from where we live. I don't know, is this something you've been talking about too? Is it a kind of common, is it your experience too, or do you feel it differently?
Yeah, no, I kind of just echo everything you just said on that.
Yeah.
Like, I don't have like much more to add to that, but it's been like a similar thing that you just kind of been, just, what did I say? I guess we were talking about it I was talking about it with someone who's like big in nightlife, like quite a big DJ, and we were talking about like the effect of the pandemic on like nightlife, and actually like seemingly somehow club owners have kind of are seen as like the protagonists, or like the heroes of like, or like the protagonists of like a struggling nightlife industry. And it's like, well, what about all of the DJs that weren't like officially freelance, weren't paying tax, and now I've been fucked because they don't have
Oh, yeah.
Do you know what I mean? That they're like they couldn't get any freelance furlough, or like these are the kind of conversations that, and I guess kind of just a similar thing in that it's sometimes those gaps are sometimes not obvious, and I think made less obvious when it's like by like popular media who are like pushing people to the fore and stuff, if that made any sense.
Yeah, I mean, I guess it's all those people living in the grey economy who, and a lot of those are people working in the cultural sector who are kind of like really struggling to just make ends meet. I mean, it's more of the same to some degree, but I think it is exacerbated. Okay, so I think, hang on, I'm just looking at my notes. I want people to think of any last questions they might have for us just now as we kind of talk through this last section. I thought it might be nice, when we spoke before, you asked me like which artists I particularly appreciated, and my mind went completely blank. It's like, no one's asked me that for a really long time. And then I just thought, oh no, that is actually a really nice question. So first I'm going to tell you about some of the artists whose work I've been kind of paying attention to over the last year. Then I would really like to know more about your T-shirt and your answer to that question also. Because I think, I mean, the things you were talking about when we met before, I just thought they kind of shine a light a little bit on some of the work that's going on in this area. So I think the artists I'm interested in, they're artists I was interested in before we all got locked away for a year and a half. But they include Aurea Harvey, who's a really early net artist. I'm saying these because I just want to share the love so people can go and check them out. So Aurea Harvey was a really eye-wateringly early net artist. She went on to be the co-founder of Tale of Tales, which was a kind of artist-led game company, but they made artist games. And she made my most favorite game artwork ever, which is called The Endless Forest, which they called a social screensaver. And this was really early, it was like in the early noughties. And in Endless Forest, when your computer went to sleep, it re-woke up and you could navigate this dream space as a deer alongside a lot of other, so it's like this social, you couldn't speak, but you could kind of rub shoulders and bark and dance with other deer in this virtual space. It's like really magical. Aurea Harvey is now making really powerful work about all kinds of things. I don't want to put too much of a label on it. You should just go and check her out. Also, I think the artist I did mention to you was Cassie Thornton, I like the way she talks about art. So she's kind of always finding ways to talk about the discomfort that exists between the kind of art and politics. So she says that she uses the business of art to advance her anti-capitalist activism, which is usually a kind of debt activism and health and ableism activism. And her current project is the Hologram, which is a kind of peer-to-peer feminist healthcare system. Everyone should check it out. And then
Ruth,
yes.
Sorry to interrupt, just to say me and Fergus are trying to work out the spellings just for BSL, so if you have them as well, maybe just pop them in the chat, like after or during.
I will do that.
Thank you.
And my final recommendations are Ria Myers and Sarah Friend, who are both making, like, I think really smart and feeling conceptual art that critiques and reveals the power flows in the kind of emerging blockchain and crypto space. Now, I think that's important because the emerging blockchain and crypto space can feel really awful, can feel awful, alienating, and like there's nothing of interest or use to society in there. And I think Ria and Sarah do really great work of kind of just opening the black box up and showing how the world might be otherwise if we looked at it through a slightly different lens. Okay, that gave you a little bit of time to think through your own answers.
I did, but also maybe we could just go back from there and ask you what kind of, like, obviously they're your kind of like artists that you're fucking with, but like, yeah, I guess the question about space for resistance, like, and how can we democratize online spaces? How positive are you about that? And like, how positive are you that those spaces do exist?
Okay, thank you. So we use kind of, given social media platforms, the broad spread in a fairly promiscuous manner. We like it when artists do things that reveal all the awful things about them. We talk about a lot of the awful things about them. We like works that are critical of these things and that are critical of the kind of relational politics in these platforms, in their work. That's one of the things that gets us really excited. But over the last kind of few years, we have seen this emergence of new technologies of decentralization, and just like more nuanced understandings and engagements with questions about surveillance capitalism. So technologies that preserve, where you can better preserve your identities, your privacy. You can use pseudonyms, where you continue to own your data. The platforms don't own your data. So I think we're seeing a kind of growth in people knowing that it's a thing to think about. So like a move maybe from WhatsApp to Telegram and Signal, understanding that nothing will keep you safe, but some things will keep you a bit safer. And that some things are maybe politically better things to be kind of getting, like exercising certain muscles in a different way, like thinking about privacy. We're also currently developing, like the hologram that we're kind of collaborating on, and we're making these live action role plays, and we're working at the moment in Discord. So this is again privacy preserving, doesn't own your data, community building spaces that have been really important to us. And I guess the last thing to say on this, and I get a little bit evangelical about this, is that we don't allow people to build websites for us that aren't using free and open source content management systems. We want, like, if our designers or our techies need to go and do something else, we want to know that we can either do it ourselves, make changes we need ourselves, or bring other techies in to make changes, because it's a system that they can also access. Was that the question you asked me?
Yeah, I mean, yeah, definitely. It was interesting. And I think, I don't know, I think it's maybe a separate discussion also for someone that knows a bit more than me, but like, I think the gaming sphere is a really interesting one. And I think how you're able to, you know, you might still be existing or using the kind of existing platforms, but there's a lot of space to be really playful with identity within games that, like, you know, isn't afforded to everyone. Like, again, there's not a like split, but IRL, like in real life. So yeah, be really playful with identities, you know, particularly people whose identities might be marginalized in quote unquote the real world.
I mean, I think that this is like, so the live action role play that we're developing at the moment, this is like an absolutely core driver for this, is a kind of, yeah, an ability to shape our identities on our own terms, to not be in a co-creative space where everyone comes with the baggage of their existing artistic identity, even, you know, like where things can very quickly turn to bullshit because you aren't, you know, like it's just really hard to work sometimes in those spaces. Sometimes working pseudonymously just gives you so much more freedom. Okay.
And then the question was, do we want to go back to that? My artists.
Yes, yes, yes.
I'm really reluctant to name off artists because there are just so many. Like, I'm a bit of a nerd.
Course.
Like, I feel any time like it's just like an endless list. One suggestion I was going to put in when you're talking about surveillance, and it's a bit old now, 6 years old, but Simone Brown wrote a book called Dark Matters, which was really good. So if anyone's wanting to read a bit more about like, yeah, digital and surveillance stuff, Simone Brown's really great. If they want to break from like Foucault on that, maybe then like.
Can you tell us a bit more about it? Why is that important?
I guess just like framing surveillance and looking at surveillance and like talking about it in like the framework of identities and like particularly like Black identities and kind of what surveillance was born out of and like the kind of various kind of like historical policing of like Black people that has informed modern day surveillance practices. Yeah, is like really interesting.
Thank you.
There was that. And then artist wise, yeah, I'm reluctant. Ruth brought up my shirt and I've already shouted them out once, but yeah, Black Obsidian sound system, amazing, like sound system, kind of community based in South London, and now, you know, kind of do lots of work around that. And I think, yeah, they kind of were famous a few weeks ago, or like viral a few weeks ago, for their response to the Turner Prize. And I think that's like opens up like a much more interesting, like wider discussion about like arts organizations, like prizes, like institutions trying to work with, I guess, more radical or like marginalized groups or artists, and actually like realizing that actually, you know, you can't just socialize them into like the existing kind of definitely white supremacist, but just, yeah, kind of like bad working practices or like horrible working practices that these places abide by. And actually, yeah, you've kind of got to think differently about it. And actually, it's a much bigger task. It's not enough, you know, I'm not really a fan of representation anyway, but it's not enough to like just have the representation without actually thinking, you know, like delving deeper into like your broader practices.
Thank you. Could you link to them in the chat, maybe?
Write their name, yeah. Shall I just write their name, or I'll write their name, and I think
write their name. And we've since discovered 3 remaining questions, and of course now we're going to run out of time. So I'm going to let's try and do this. So Bav Bella says, I would love to know if Baile looked beyond the barriers of scaling up and funding, where he would love to see himself and Sable Radio in, say, 5 years' time.
Okay. Do you want to start with that, or are you going to read them out?
Okay, yeah, let's read them all out so we don't run out of time. So Kerry Harker is interested in both of our thoughts on access to digital tech for smaller initiatives. There's been an assumption in the art sector that it's all major institutions with IT departments and access to great Wi-Fi and kit So we can all be doing Zoom events 24/7. What strategies or funding are you aware of for small scale organisations and freelancers who can often be digitally excluded themselves? I only have a complaint about that. I have no useful answers to that one. And the last one is, in our post-COVID world and from the developments, this is from Beth Lambert, in our post-COVID world and from the developments that may have come out of lockdown, what do you hope we keep digitally speaking? What do you hope we keep digitally speaking, and what do you hope we lose? Online exhibitions, etc.
Oh, that's a good question, the last one. Are you okay, Ruth? I'll just start then. Sable in 5 years if scaling up wasn't a problem. I don't know. I don't think it's interesting. I guess for me, it's wanting to work with like that kind of balance between like that global reach and then also local reach. And I don't think we need to be huge to be doing either of those things. I think locally, definitely community. You know, I would just love to be able to have it as a platform that can, offer access to equipment, sound equipment, camera equipment, all those different types of even more expansive digital equipment to people that don't have access to it now. You know, whether they be like, specifically thinking like a lot of young people not having access to these things, like, non-white communities in the city not having access to these things. So for me, that would be something like in 5 years, I'd be really happy. And then, just also being able to engage with artists like internationally that we find interesting and that whose practice is like really interesting and like, I guess hopefully like more subversive, like going forward and like thinking like, I guess that would be it. But then also if I'm completely honest, we've had 2 birthdays in lockdown. We're not, 5-year plan. I'm not someone that plans crazy far ahead. And I kind of just take it as it comes. So I think a 5-year plan is kind of daunting. I mean, hopefully it's still around, but like I offer no assurances or guarantees of that.
Okay. I'm keeping us moving on because we have 5 minutes and I think these are interesting questions. I'm going to take the second question. If you want to have a think about the second question. I said I had a complaint about the kind of the major institutions with IT departments. One of the things that I've seen in this country, like especially in England, and the idea about what digital is in the art world is this idea of it always being about broadcast and a kind of a broadcast model, not the good kind of broadcast, the kind of broadcast from the central authorities. So putting putting live streaming of opera or dance or theatre online as that being what digital is. And as listening to Baile talk, I think just like really highlights what other world is possible, which is a world in which instead of having culture being broadcast from established institutions, we have culture that is made on the ground in very many different places and shared. And I think that this is this is a top-down kind of policy problem, actually. I don't know if you, Baile, if you have a different perspective.
Yeah, no, I agree. I definitely agree. I mean, my first thought was then it was actually what about having institutions that are capable to actually engage with those people that are making the content at a ground level. But then I think actually if we were really dreaming that maybe those institutions wouldn't exist at all and it would be something more kind of free of them. And I think even that, my mind immediately went to that. I was like, how would Leeds Art Gallery interact with everyone making content across Leeds and like platform it? And then I was like, actually maybe there wouldn't be a Leeds Art Gallery in this world.
Okay, that might be for a longer conversation. Do you want to give? I feel like you might have nice answers to Beth's question about what you keep and what you would lose from digitally speaking from our COVID experience.
What have I really liked? I mean, there was a lot of bad stuff. There was a lot of good. I mean, okay, TikTok. As horribly commercial as it is, like the front page, and really daunting if you're just getting into it, I would, I mean, tell everyone just power past that bit, because I think for me it kind of encompasses how playful like digital experiences can be, and whether that's like, yeah, like, I don't know, it was just like amazing to see, like, I mean, there's a lot of like politics around TikTok even, but yeah, just, yeah, it's not like some free utopia, but yeah, really playful. And I think that is kind of what like we enjoy about online digital kind of structures, is that, yeah, how playful you can be. So TikTok, and just, yeah, and just more people have feeling like, actually, cool, we're locked up, barriers to equipment, and actually thinking, actually maybe we don't need the like highest tech spec thing, and actually we can maybe get by. And I think the year gave people more, hopefully not everyone, definitely didn't give everyone more space, but gave, you know, a lot of people more space to think about, actually, how can I do this without needing all the equipment in the world. So just more experimentation and playfulness, I suppose.
I think I would only be repeating what you just said in a different way to answer that question. So I think we should wrap up there. Thank you so much, Baile. It's been really fun. And I think Kerry and Karis and Amara are going to come and wrap up the whole event. I'd just like to say that I feel so much more relaxed now than I did when I joined after a whole day of like moshing at my computer. So thanks, guys. It's been really lovely.
Thank you so much for your time.
Thanks for having us.
Yes, you're welcome. Like, we're so grateful to have you in this space. I'm feeling quite like emotionally overwhelmed that like we're here, everyone who's come on this journey with us. I'm very much like of the opinion, like, if you've managed to facilitate like if there was one valuable conversation and one valuable takeaway in this event, like that would have still been a success. And to hear all of these extraordinary journeys and all of this amazing experience and all the people who have joined us over the last 2 days and kind of soaked that up, like it's just brilliant. Thank you to everybody who's been able to join us. I think, like, yeah, the seed of collective action is coming together in this sense of solidarity. So grateful for this space. Amara, Karis, I don't know if you wanted to add anything to that.
I just wanted to also thank you, Ruth and Baile, for today, and of course everyone who's talked over the whole 2 days, and like Fergus, Becky, like everyone who has made the 2 days possible. But I kept thinking about, I think Andre Anderson said something in one of the conversations yesterday in Architectures of Change, and he challenged when I asked him about something that was future facing, and he said, I don't really like to use the term futures, I want to think about possibilities and a multitude of possibilities. And all of these conversations have kind of returned this idea of hope as a practice to me, and seeing all of the work that you're invested in. It's not easy. At times it's laborious. There are so many challenges. There are so many impossible conditions that we're navigating through, and seeing some of the things that are being birthed even from those impossible conditions reminds me that hope really is a practice. And as I'm looking ahead at all the possibilities, the last 2 days have just been super, super dope. So thank you very much, everyone.
Thanks for having us.
Thanks, guys. I was invited to also just kind of say a few thanks at the end of here, and I wanted it to feel really sincere, but I'm also just going to refer to a few notes to make sure I don't forget anybody. Just a huge thank you to Amara for their supportive and exciting collaboration developing the programme, for their boundless support, generosity, and just for the joy and warmth and energy they brought to the process and the journey. A real heartfelt thank you to the amazing hosts and speakers who joined us over the last 2 days, for their brilliant facilitation, and for their honest and really insightful contributions, and for all the urgent and tireless work that you all continue to do. and also to recognise those that weren't within the programme, organisations in neighbourhoods, estates, community kitchens, green spaces across the country. The work is relentless, it's ambitious, it's challenging, and it's essential. And I hope this conversation goes a small way to recognising and profiling that work. And a huge thank you as well to Where This All Began, to Mansions of the Future, and to our colleagues that have supported these last 2 days. We owe you so much, as does the city. So thank you. Thank you.
Aris, thank you. One final thank you to the BSL interpreters as well. We access their services through Clarion UK, CLARION. So if anybody else kind of wanted to have BSL supporting their event, that's where you can go. Yeah, huge love. So these resources will be available online in time, so feel free to share them with your friends. And we'll be following up with all of the attendees to the conference, just to share Becky's visual illustrations with you, and thank you all for coming, and a couple of other bits. Enjoy your Fridays, enjoy the football if you're watching the football, and yeah, have a drink for all of us. Thank you so much to everyone. Bye.
Thank you, everybody. Bye.
Bye.